Let's talk about Metallica's Black Album. Have you ever wondered how Metallica transformed their sound with the Black Album? Today I'm diving into the guitars on the Black Album.
You made your point. We get it.
Unveiling the gear, the challenges, and some of the magic behind creating some of those monumental guitar tones. Can we recreate the tones for Enter Sandman? Wherever I may roam. The Unforgiven. And Sad But True. Stick around as we embark on a journey to unravel the mysteries of this legendary album's guitar tones.
Bob used to be a woman. Look at tough guy.
Nice hair color.
Did your makeup.
What's up, I'm Brian, and on my channel I like to delve into riffs, histories, guitars, and tones. This week I wanted to tackle recreating the iconic guitar tone from the Black Album, a tone often hailed as their greatest guitar sound. Unlike my previous attempts, I won't have any of the notes from Flemming Rasmussen to rely on, making it a bit more challenging this time. However, James's tones appear pretty consistent album to album.
Surprise, surprise.
So let's embark on a journey to recreate the tones. First, let's take a brief look at the history behind this album.
Play some new crap now. You got the new one? Right on. This is a happy little one I'm sure you fucking all dig. Sad but true.
After wrapping up the Injustice for All tour, Metallica craved a musical shift in their music in the fall of 1990. Seeking a fresh perspective, they enlisted the help of Bob Rock for this album.
You know, I'm really proud of you for trying something new.
With Rock's production magic, they crafted a simpler yet catchier album that catapulted them into superstardom. Bob Rock not only contributed to well-crafted songs, but also played a pivotal role in shaping the guitar tones that they have. Despite experimenting and adding in a bunch of different guitars and amps for this album, the core of the tone still remains the same. James, now endorsed by ESP, had his MX220 and 250 to use for this album, with the EMG 8160 combo, and this time instead of just a Mesa Boogie Mark IIC Plus, he had the modded version, the Mesa Boogie Mark IIC Plus Plus. Once again, I believe it was slaved into the Marshall JCM 800. They still use Marshall cabs for this album, but I believe it was loaded with V30s instead of the greenbacks they were using, and again I think they were using the Aphex EQ F2, a familiar tool from the Master of Puppets and Injustice for All albums. So now let's get into my signal chain. So once again, I have my Harley Benton EX84 with the 8160 combo like James's guitar. I'll be using the Fluff 2C Plus again. It's a stellar budget alternative to the pricier Neural DSP 2C Plus and actual 2C Pluses, which are just crazily priced. For my cab, once again, I'll be using IRs. This time I'll be using the Marshall 1960 Dave Mustaine because it has the V30s loaded into it. And these IRs are part of the signature pack from Audio Assault that I've been using. And once again, I want to A-B my tones with the IRs from Tone Deck. My buddy over at Tone Deck sent me this one for free, and I think they just sound fantastic. And if you want to check them out, I'm going to link them below. So for this one, I want to take a look at 4 tracks: Enter Sandman, Wherever I May Roam, The Unforgiven, and Sad But True. So this means I'll need to take a look at a clean tone and a clean lead tone for 2 of the tracks. So the clean tones will be made with just 1 amp. But I do know they used a Jazz Chorus 120 on the album, like they have been using. Despite the absence of Flemming Rasmussen's notes for this album, I did stumble upon a Guitar World article trying to recreate the Sad But True tone, and I'm going to use this as a great starting point for the album tones, but I'm still going to do some tweaking to get it where I want it to be. Okay, so the first place I'm going to start is the clean tone from Enter Sandman. So for this one, I had the input on 5, the gain on 3, bass on 7, mids on 4, treble on 7, presence on 7, and the master on 4. For the graphical EQ, I scooped out the low end and boosted the mids a tiny bit, and boosted the high end. So here's the tone that I got. It wasn't too hard to fine tune it, but I was just trying to get that right tone for the beginning of the album. And then here's that same tone with the Tone Deck IRs instead. So now I have the main tone for Enter Sandman. Most of the settings on the amp face do not change for the tracks, and I sculpted these tones based off what James liked to do for Master of Puppets and Injustice for All. So he usually keeps his input around 9, gain around 6, bass somewhere between 1 and 2, mids at 4, treble at 7, This time I put the presence around 5, master between 6 and 7, and for the graphical EQ a nice scoop V like he always does. So once again I tried to mimic the Aphex EQ F2 that they use in a lot of their albums. I follow the guidelines that are provided on the Puppet Master EQ store page from Master Effects. And if you're interested, please go check them out. They seem like a really good company. I'd like to get my hands on it someday, but with the parametric EQ, I can get pretty close to the tones that I want. So for the parametric EQ on this track, I did a high pass around 180 Hz to scoop out some of that low end boom, a low shelf around 260 Hz, scooped out some of the mids around 730, then did a high shelf around 2000 Hz and boosted that about 4 dB because I noticed I was getting a lot of fuzz in this tone if I boosted it too high. So then here's my tone for this track. I noticed I really had to fine tune the high mids and the highs because it was a little too fuzzy up top in the top range. And I also really need to fine tune that low end because it's not too much boom, but it's also not completely scooped out of there. So now I'm going to show off the tone Deck IRs. So now I want to move on to Wherever I May Roam. So for this track, I had to adjust the amp and the parametric EQ quite a bit. I brought the gain down to 4. I brought the presence up to a 7 for this tone. The master is down to a 5, and I kept the graphical EQ the same. For the parametric EQ on this track, I did a high pass around 80 Hz this time, a low shelf around 187 Hz, boosted 6 dB, a nice mid scoop around 850 Hz, and a high shelf around 2080 Hz, and boosted that about 6 dB for this track, because I feel like they had more highs in this track than they did for Enter Sandman. So then here's my tone for this track. So yeah, this tone really needed a little bit more low end than Enter Sandman did, and a lot more of those highs. I noticed that it might work pretty well with A Wolf and Man. So now here's the tone Deck IRs. So now I want to take a look at the Unforgiven. I did a clean lead and then a distorted tone for this one. I think it was a bit different from the Enter Sandman clean tone. I have the input at 2, the gain at 8, bass at 1, mids at 7, treble at 8, presence at 7, and the master at 2. For the graphical EQ, I introduced some mids here, but just slightly boosted. And then I didn't do a parametric EQ for this one as well. But I do have the chorus, delay, and reverb pedals, and I felt I needed to go a little bit heavy with the reverb on this one, and I like where it's at. So here's my clean lead tone for the Unforgiven. And then here's the tone Deck IRs for the same tone. So now I got my main distorted tone for the Unforgiven. The amp settings are the same as Wherever I May Roam for this one. Parametric EQ is a little different. I did a high pass around 123 Hz, a low shelf around 225 Hz, a nice mid cut around 252 Hz, a high shelf around 2080 Hz, and a low pass around 1390 Hz. So then here's the tone that I came up with for the Unforgiven. So now here's the tone Deck IRs with that same tone. So this is the last tone I came up with for Sad But True. So I did end up going off the amp settings from Guitar World. I think it worked pretty well here. Here's the amp settings. And then the parametric EQ for this one is the same as Enter Sandman, but I did introduce more low end in my high pass around 143 Hz and adjusted the low shelf to 250 Hz. This one's a hard one to recreate because I know they did layer a lot of guitars under this one and a baritone guitar to get that real beefy low end on the chugs. But I think I did pretty well with this one. So here's my tone. And then here's the tone Deck IRs for this one. I think I really like the tone Deck IR here. It really adds that low end without getting too crazy with it. So now I want to get into my final thoughts on this and then do an A-B comparison of the tones. Recreating the tones for this album was a blast, and I'm pretty thrilled with the results, even though it did take me a bit to fine-tune each one of the tracks to get them pretty close to being right. The real challenge I found was really nailing the gear. It was trying to match James Hetfield's rhythm playing. His precision is really the secret sauce to these tones, and he was able to quad track all of these guitar tracks, which really added to that really big sound they had for the album. My goal wasn't strict album accuracy, but a tone that was really close and is really good for jamming along with the album. And then as you heard, if you use the tone Deck IRs, you can get really close to the album tones. So now I want to do a tone comparison with the Marshall IRs and the tone Deck IRs that I have been using. So if you enjoyed this video, I have a video right here where I did a deep dive of Enter Sandman. I looked at the history, the guitar tones, and did a cover of the song. Peace.